Hello, folks, and welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa. It's a dark day indeed in South Africa, and there's just one bastion left for freedom, democracy, and governance in South Africa, and that's the Constitutional Court. It's the last remaining bastion of defense for South Africa's voting population and the people of South Africa responding to the tyranny of the ruling African National Congress. What am I talking about? Well, today, the 4th of August, 2021, the Independent Electoral Commission approached the Constitutional Court to request an extraordinary measure that was presumably unprecedented in their words. Well, yes, it is unprecedented. The Constitution of South Africa and legislation dictate that the country hold elections no later than 5 years after the last municipal elections. But the government of South Africa, wildly unpopular owing to its inept response to the pandemic and also its non-existent response to nearly 11 days of looting and rioting in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal provinces in South Africa, which led to untold misery, suffering, and economic carnage, not to mention the loss in investor confidence and the disappearance of foreign direct investment. This idiocy, this lunacy, people not being able to attend the funerals of their loved ones, people not being able to visit families, life suspended for 2 years, and nothing has been accomplished. In fact, quite the opposite has been accomplished. The ANC is so unpopular and so terrified to hold elections that they'll do anything to prevent elections from happening. And that's unconstitutional. In fact, they recognize that and ask for the Constitutional Court to violate the Constitution with a decision. Now, according to the Independent Electoral Commission, this request to delay the elections will balance the political rights of citizens with the right to life, bodily, and psychological integrity and access to health, according to Independent Electoral Commission Chairperson Glenn Mashinini. The right to life from a country that makes it legal for abortion in the first trimester. What right to life do those South African citizens have? Seems like a pretty lame excuse to delay an election. Now, this comes a couple weeks after former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke and a commission came up with reports saying that it wasn't safe for South Africa to hold free and fair elections in 2021. Really? About 30 African countries have held elections during the pandemic and held over 30 elections total. Some held parliamentary and then presidential elections, and also we had a runoff in Niger. In fact, in southern Africa, just to the north of South Africa, in tiny, poor Zambia, there's a national election scheduled for 8 days from today on the 12th of August. 12th August, an election. Now, the army's been called out because of some pre-election violence, which resulted in the deaths of 2 people. But they're going forth an election in the midst of the pandemic. So why can't South Africa? What's magical about South Africa that's so incompetent to hold an election when much of the world holds an election? I myself have participated in 3 elections since this began, in person, with social distancing and good hygiene. Nothing came of it other than my vote was counted. May of 2020, November of 2020, and June of 2021. So what gives, South Africa? We didn't even have a jab. You at least have a jab now to protect people. So why can't you do this? Now, this all comes on the heels of this request or this recommendation by Moseneke to postpone this. And he said that he concluded that it would be better to postpone the elections due to health risk. He says he'd heard submissions by health experts, civil society representatives, and political parties on the matter. But what about South Africa's 25 million registered voters? What did you hear from them? Who cares what civil society representatives are? Who cares who your health experts are? You've never shown us your health executives. You never paraded them out in front of us. You've never shown us their bona fides. Simply claiming health experts and civil society representatives is utter nonsense. Who are these people? It's about time that the government of South Africa start producing the people they claim are the experts that they rely on to make these decisions. And as I said, what are the 25 million registered voters in South Africa? Over 25 million South Africans are currently registered for this election, and now they'll be denied their democratic voice. Now, this all comes quickly on the heels of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who was forced to declare the elections, formally the proclamation that it will take place on the 27th of October. Of course, she stumbled over her prepared speech and called it the 21st of October, but it is the 27th of October. She did that on Tuesday, yesterday, and that's required by law. And now what goes forward, we'll see. As you can see with this timeline for 2016, the Electoral Commission has a lot of things to do, and they've done jack squat. This is 2016. You see all the different events take place on a timeline here, and this is one of their excuses for delaying the elections, requesting the court delay the elections because they can't prepare. Except that March 27th, 2020 is when South Africa first went into lockdown. And we've known since March 27th of 2020 that elections were coming no later than October, November of 2021. So what exactly have they been doing? Is this like the lie that President Cyril Ramaphosa told us? We need 21 days to prepare the hospitals for the coming surge. 16 months later, the hospitals are not prepared. In fact, there are fewer intensive care unit beds in many locations because of negligence and a fire at the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital, which they spent 5 weeks awarding a tender to repair it, knowing that the next wave was coming. Speaking of the Independent Electoral Commission and its failure to do things, its only window that it set up to do voter registration was canceled mid-July as a consequence of restrictions by the government over the current wave of the pandemic. Now, they say without another registration weekend, the number of registered voters is likely to not be as high as it could be. And this speaks to the legitimacy of elections. Really? Really? 25 million people are registered, and they did have a registration previously, and only 17,964 people bothered to do electronic registrations. So how many people do you actually think are going to come and register? Traditionally, municipal elections get 31 to 38% of the eligible voter population. Now, they like to cook the numbers. If you look at the 2016 election and say, wow, it was 55% of voters turned out. No, 55% of registered voters turned out, not of eligible voters. And that's the piece they forget. So the odds are pretty strong that the 25 million plus who are currently registered, 25.7 million, is probably about as high as it's ever going to get. It was only 26 million in 2016. So this is a non sequitur and misleading to say the least. Now, the IEC's deputy chairperson, Janet Love, said that other countries, some other countries in Africa and the rest of the world have held elections since the start of the pandemic with what she said were devastating consequences. Which were? What devastating consequences? Please tell me could you share that? Which country? Has Somaliland fallen off the map? Has there been mass starvation and death? Political unrest? No. Central African Republic, a failed state, has held an election. They seem to be doing fine. Niger held an election, not only held an election, but the first ever Arab became president in the history of Niger in a runoff election. Now there's a coup attempt, but that's not devastating consequences. That was put down. So what were these devastating consequences? Once again, the lying bureaucracy and government and ANC, in this case, the lying Independent Electoral Commission, fails to produce any information or evidence. They simply make a blanket statement. Devastating consequences. 3 times voted in person with no jabs available each time I went for it. What devastating consequences? This is a lie. It's deceptive. And of course, many sheeple will fall for it. But the reality is that South Africa's democracy is on knife's edge, and there's only one place left to save it, and that is the Constitutional Court. Now, the Independent Electoral Commission is asking the Constitutional Court to declare that the Commission can hold the elections outside the 90-day period required by Section 159, subsection 2 of the Constitution, and Section 24, subsection 2 of the Local Government Municipal Structures Act of 1998. And it asked that the elections be delayed no later than February 2022. Okay. Well, what of the 5th wave? What happens in February 2022? What about an echo variant? We seem to have new variants, new diseases popping up every day. More excuses to deny liberty, deny freedom, deny democracy. What about flying monkeys? Will flying monkeys descending out of the sky be a health crisis to prevent people throwing their feces on voters? This is lunacy, folks. The entire world has been holding elections in the midst of all this nonsense and somehow done it successfully. Now, alternatively, they want the Constitutional Court to declare that the failure to hold the municipal elections by 1 November 2021 is unconstitutional. Well, yeah, they don't need to declare that. That's what the law says. That's what the Constitution says. Unconstitutional and invalid, and suspend the declaration of invalidity until, so they want them to declare it unconstitutional and then say that invalidity is suspended. Do they even have that power, the Constitutional Court, to overrule the Constitution? Aren't they supposed to interpret the Constitution, not make law? This would appear to be a case of making law. There's no provision that I'm aware of in the Constitution allows them to simply change the Constitution. There's a process for it, isn't there? So the court can just say, hey, all right, you know what? It violates the Constitution, but we're going to suspend that. So you give 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever people are on the court, you give them that choice to suspend the Constitution, the basic law protecting South African rights. In order to avoid uncertainty about the legal status of current municipal councils, the Commission seeks an order that the municipal councils remain competent until newly elected councils are declared elected. Now, that's the most egregious of all the requests. Delaying elections is one thing, but what you see is happening here, the ANC rules most municipalities in South Africa, most smaller ones anyway, and they want to violate existing law. This is in clear violation of existing law. Councils must be dissolved if there's no election. If the Constitution is violated, the councils must be dissolved and a caretaker government appointed. But the ANC doesn't want to do that because their cadres won't get paid. They'll suffer when they're thrown out of government offices. This is ridiculous. Has South Africa ever canceled elections because of the prevalence of TB, tuberculosis, which is widespread, highly contagious in South Africa? I don't think so. Influenza? I don't think so. In fact, I know they haven't. Never canceled election. But now the ANC, wildly unpopular, a party that managed just 8 million votes, actually less than 8 million votes, or barely over 53% of those who voted in the 2016 municipal elections. If they were to vote today for a municipal election in South Africa, it's very obvious that the ANC would be lucky to get 4 million votes, maybe 5 million votes. 6 million would be a stretch. 5 million votes. The Democratic Alliance, despite its foibles, got 4 million in 2016 when it was riding high, and is likely to get that many or more in an election if it were held right now. So this is what this is all about. They are trying to deny liberty, and there's just one bastion to protect freedom and democracy in South Africa, and that's the Constitutional Court. Will the court be captured, or will it rule that the Constitution is clear? There must be an election. And if the government violates that and doesn't allow, and the Independent Electoral Commission doesn't go forward with an election, then the councils must be suspended forthwith. There you go, folks. Wow, democracy under siege in South Africa. It's shocking to say the least, but no, it's not. Those paying close attention to South Africa, which would be virtually no one on the planet, those few paying attention would know that this is just the latest tactic by a totalitarian fascist government and its captured institutions to perpetuate its rule into endless perpetuity. That's redundant, endless perpetuity. But into perpetuity. That's what they want here. They're incompetent, and they don't want to rule by the rule of law. It's all platitudes. They don't care about it. Folks, this lawlessness is coming to a country or town near you. We already see Australia in grave circumstances. Canada's lost its mind as well. The United Kingdom has banned demonstrations. What's that all about? Coming to a town near you. South Africa's democracy, at this stage, beginning to have the appearance of a disgrace. What a sad, sad outcome for the Rainbow Nation. The country the world held so much hope for in 1994. Captured, corrupt, dangerous, unsafe at any speed. South Africa in 2021. Hey folks, if you're not a subscriber, be sure to become a subscriber. Smash the button right down there and give us a like on the video. Appreciate your support for the channel. God bless and take care of yourselves. And South Africans, call your representatives, call your ward counselors, deluge their email accounts, have your voice heard, contact media, radio stations, television stations, deluge them, complaining. Where are the 25 million registered voters' voices? Not in this request. There's no way the 25 million people say delay, delay, delay. There are other ways to do it. You could hold a week-long election. Have people come in one day, have people come another day. That way you get social distancing. Lots of ways to do this, but not even an effort. Free and fair elections are unsafe in South Africa for the African National Congress.